really about 40 minutes together in terms of sessions that we want to cover, and then the rest of the time is really to take question and answer. So we'll have Olivia here that will also be able to answer some of the questions that are directed to the student experience. So we'll begin. Welcome everyone. Today is February 1st, 2023, and we're happy to have one of our recent alum from the researcher cohort. My name is Moni. I'm the Senior Research and Engagement Officer here at Reach Alliance, and I will be reviewing today kind of the overall program of Reach and the pillars that comprise of our program, and then Olivia will share her student experience and what she's gained through it. And then I will, at the end, overview the agenda, the practical elements of application, and then we'll have open the floor up for questions. So we will enable closed captioning, so those that need accessibility can turn that on in their Zoom features. Okay, so we'll get started. So what is a Reach Alliance, and what does the actual components of the program look like? So we were founded in 2015 at the University of Toronto with support from the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth. And so we originally started as a Reach project with a few research groups that went out to countries with our founder, Professor Joseph Wong. And then we're able to carry out field work in person and then come back and draft reports. But then we received support from the MasterCard Center for Inclusive Growth, realizing that the actionable insights that the students are producing were of great interest in terms of the relevance to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and wanting to scale that up and be able to provide more students from across the world with the same experience. And so there we went from a small Reach project to now being a global alliance where we have 8 universities from around the world that are also carrying out research that is particularly examining how critical interventions and innovations are reaching the hardest to reach. And so how we're doing it as well is also similar across our 8 partner sites. It's a student-driven initiative, which means that the research question and the process is driven by the students with support and mentorship from faculty. So this is not a typical research assistant role in which there's already a defined question and a set of methodology, and the faculty will tell you what the work is. This is flipping the usual approach in which the students are identifying they are co-principal investigators. They author their own case study with the faculty. But of course, the process is driven by the students themselves. So the research that is produced by our students are featured in leading outlets and in-depth and other knowledge translation products, and that's, you can see, available on our Reach Alliance website case study page. So our vision is to investigate how to get important stuff to everyone, everywhere. That is still the mission, true today. From 7 years ago when we were started, 200 and close to 240 students have gone through the program, from undergraduate, graduate to postdoc, or doctorate level, I should say. And that's across all of our 8 sites to date. And we really have a mission to, one, pursue the full achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by not just the actionable insights that are produced, but 2, by the equipping of the global leaders and the knowledge that they create. So it's a leadership, but also a research initiative here. So we've got together 40 case studies that have been published, and you can see that throughout the case study page. In terms of the scope and reach of our work, you could see on our map that we've got the 8 partners here. So we've got 2 universities in the UK. We've got 2 universities in Africa, Ashesi and University of Cape Town. We've got Singapore Management University that will be joining us and starting a cohort next year. And then we've got a university in Australia, the Melbourne University, and Tech Monterrey in Mexico. So you can really see the from the black icons, the global scale of the Alliance, and those institutions are all doing Reach research and recruiting students at their own sites to do similar work. And then the dark green colored spots on our map are the countries in which case studies have been studied. And the numbers are related to the SDG goals of what the key focus of those case studies have been. So as you can see, we have a lot of areas and countries we have yet to discover. And so we welcome kind of growing the scope of our work in the coming days and months to come. In terms of, so that's kind of an example of all the various case study topics, everything from, violence against women and policing in India, to indigenous settlements in Mexico, to manufacturing PPE in Syria. How do you do that in a conflict zone? And examining kind of cash transfers programs for refugees in Jordan has been. So it's a wide scope of topics that relate to the SDGs. So we recruit students not just across U of T, but we also recruit students or recruit faculty across U of T. This is an example of our current cohort of faculty. We have faculty from engineering, we have a faculty from the Daulana and social work, 2 from geography, and of course our founder, who's also a political scientist, and a faculty from the iSchool. So you kind of see the wide scope of expertise that we bring in to cover all the different case study topics as well. Equity, diversity, and inclusion is key to what we do. Reaching the hardest to reach is addressing the social inequities. And so it's not just what we do, but how we also work and engage with each other in the community. This charter was developed participatory way with our alumni, our researchers, our faculty, and our partners a few years ago. And so you can see the details of our charter on our website, and highly encourage you to do so. Our program overview, it actually comprises of 3 pillars. We'll go to the first pillar. Our first pillar is the performance coaching. And this is a key component of what differentiates REACH from any other research initiative or extracurricular on campus. We really believe in interdisciplinary teamwork being the way in which collaborative and global challenges will be able to be addressed. And so we provide students with professional team coaches that will work with you on a one-to-one level, as a team level. And now we've recently introduced a community of practice where all the team leads from across the teams in the global cohort come together and be able to discuss what are the best practices that you're seeing in your team. Is the team in the UK and the team in Ghana also seeing these ways of leadership being practiced? So we bring together on a monthly basis all the team leads and to discuss all the ways that the leadership and organization of teamwork is being done. So performance coaching is key. We really know the challenges of working together from a diverse backgrounds, diverse ages, diverse cultures. And so the coaches really provide a framework that everyone can get together on the same page to figure out what each one brings to the table, and then together work on a work plan to be able to then achieve your goal, which is delivering on this research initiative. The second pillar is a skills development workshop series. So we provide as well a series of workshops that will support each team to be able to have the tools and knowledge needed to carry out their REACH research projects, bringing in alumni, bringing in our faculty who are experts in various research fields. But also we bring in paid professional who will come and deliver workshops on communication, on networking, and career planning. And this is in and above what often university settings will provide, because we really believe in the leadership and professional development skills needed in order for our students to know how to navigate their careers and their next steps, especially if they're looking to have the same kind of global impact and social impact that they want to do in their steps moving forward. And the third pillar, of course, is our research process. This is what is well known for. It's a 12 to 14 month cycle, which means that as you're doing your academic requirements, this is a co-curricular activity in which you're meeting with the team and working on developing a research project from start to end. The faculty works with each team and they will support you throughout the year to be able to get advice and expertise to help guide the process and oversee the research rigor. And so it starts with students conducting secondary research, which is all the literature review and desk research available to understand what the gaps are and to be able to formulate your research question. And then once you put in an application to Research Ethics Committee and get approval, then the primary research happens. So in the past 2 years, it's been virtual, as Olivia has been able to do, working with conducting research virtually with stakeholders abroad. But this year we are, students are able to go into the field in person and are excited to be able to return back to the travel abroad experience that we have originally provided to our students. So once the interviews and primary research is collected, there is a case study that is written, and then students will work on a knowledge translation tool. This is kind of basically a visual representation of what I've just walked through from our recruitment right now to a case study topic selection to then doing the desk research and RB and then doing primary research and report writing. And all the while you have the skills development and coaching series happening at the same time. So all those 3 pillars are happening concurrently throughout the year. These are examples of knowledge translation tools that once the case study is published, it doesn't just end there. There's many opportunities for that research to continue to be disseminated. And depending on who your audience is and who needs to know that knowledge, the outlets of how teams have been able to carry on their research into new outlets have been determined by who they want to reach. So in the first example here is a peer review journal article because it was a case study on a public health issue. So they wanted to reach public health practitioners. So they published in the British Medical Journal. The second example here is a group of alumni who worked on cash transfer case studies got together and published a kind of a synthesis paper on the topic, and the Stanford Social Innovation Review was really interested in publishing it because they've got a wide array of policymakers and practitioners in the field that are interested in development and the humanitarian sector. And then we've got some other researchers that went on to publish in op-ed articles because their audiences were policymakers or wanting to contribute to conversations that were relevant, such as COVID and refugee crisis. So you can see ways in which the research carries on and has impact well beyond the case study publication. And we also want to provide our students the opportunity to disseminate and share their work live and use the very captive audience we have of bringing together private sector, public sector, academia, and nonprofit sector together to have these discussions about key topics and about programming and reaching the hardest to reach in the same room. So we've organized recently a Reach research conference in which our alumni, in which Olivia was able to, her and her team and cohort was able to share their insights from their past research. And new researchers, even though they haven't yet carried out their research, able to share what their questions were and ask the audience as well, what are the questions that we're missing? Is there things that we can improve or gaps that we should address in the research questions that we're formulating right now? So it's really key to for us to engage our research in discussion with key decision makers from the onset. That's always our goal, is to have impact and that the research that our students produce has relevance to many key stakeholders. So at this point, I'll give over the mic to Olivia to share about her process and how all of these kind of components that I've discussed come to life and personally benefit you as a student and you as alumni as you move forward.
Thanks, Moni. So hi, everyone. My name is Olivia. I was a part of the 2021-2022 REACH cohort. And as Moni mentioned, most of our research and process was virtual. So it's going to look a little bit different than yours would moving forward. But I joined the program when I was between my first and second year of my master's program. So I graduated in June, and then we finished up this process a few months later. So my background, so I did a master's in public health, specifically in nutrition and dietetics, and I also specialized in women's health while I was doing that. My undergraduate degree is in applied human nutrition. So kind of based on both of those, not really a ton of clinical research or kind of community-based research experience. So that was kind of my big motivation for joining REACH and pursuing that project, because I knew that was something that I had an interest in, but I didn't know kind of moving forward if that was where kind of my career interests lie, because I hadn't had a lot of exposure to it, because most of my program was a more clinical-based practical or applications. So if you can move on to the next slide there. So our research project was on an organization called Digital Green. And what it is it's like a technology startup organization in India. And what they do is they use technology to disseminate information about agricultural practices to help people in these small rural communities have better yields and harvest crops that are going to be more nutritionally sound. So kind of the nutrition piece I understood, but going into this, there was a lot of pieces of this project that I had no experience with. And that's where the benefit of that interdisciplinary team really comes in, because within my team, we had someone who was in policy, someone who was in an engineering program, and originally we had someone who was in a Master's of Information program as well. So we had these different perspectives, and we were all kind of approaching this project from a different lens. And kind of the benefit of that was we had this large kind of idea or picture of this organization. And kind of as we were doing that initial secondary research that Moni mentioned, we started diving deeper into the actual processes that were going on in this organization and kind of figuring out what makes them unique and what made their project successful, where other initiatives might have kind of fallen short a little bit. And what we ended up finding was that they had a very specific gender policy. So when they designed their programming and their interventions, they did it with a very conscious effort to make it gender sensitive rather than gender agnostic. So they very much targeted the women in these communities and looked at where these women were, what they were doing, and how they could better reach them. And so that's what our team decided to focus on. So kind of our big overarching SDG that we were looking at was gender equality. And within that, there was a few other ones. So we also looked at SDG 1, which was no poverty, and SDG 3, which is good health and well-being. Those were kind of the big overarching lenses that we approached this project from, but obviously there were smaller nuances throughout as well. And our case study was actually published a few weeks ago. So it is kind of an ongoing process, and kind of even since our case study has been published, there's been things that have kind of come out of it and that are in the works. So you can definitely kind of get out of this project what you put in and take it as far as you want to. So on the next slide here, so this is our team. So we had someone who was a political science, environmental law and policy major. She was an undergraduate in her 4th or 5th year when she did the REACH project. Myself in the master's program, and then our third partner was a mechanical engineering student, and she was actually doing a practicum during most of this experience. So she was kind of working a full-time job and doing this as well. So it definitely is manageable in terms of the time commitment. And then the external team, so we had our 2 faculty mentors. They were both engineering professors. So they were able to provide a little bit of guidance in terms of that and having the research experience. And then someone who is a very critical member of our team was our performance coach, and her name is Nicole. So kind of from the get-go, she helped us figure out how we wanted to work together as a team, what that was going to look like for us, and helped us with strategies surrounding giving feedback and what to do when things weren't working well, and kind of how we could troubleshoot things more from a dynamic team perspective rather than the actual kind of content or process of what the information we were doing, and more of like the research base. Hers was more looking at kind of how we function as a team. And the skills that we gained for that were absolutely invaluable. We still kind of practice all of these in our day-to-day lives and careers. And I would definitely say that's a huge benefit of the REACH program, was learning how to work together in a team effectively. On the next slide here. So kind of just to highlight some of the different experiences and kind of what I took out of it. So obviously the research experience is something that is a huge kind of emphasis. I'd never filled out an REB application before, and this was something that there was a lot of support given around. Qualitative interview skills is something that is emphasized in the workshops, and obviously you gain through actually practicing that in person. Initially, effective knowledge translation is something that's highlighted as well. So once you have this information, what do you do with it, and how do you give it back to people? And that's something that there's a lot of support around, and kind of you're able to curate that to the audience that you're trying to get the point to. Again, so the performance coaching, Nicole was our kind of team lead there. So we looked at kind of team bonding, leadership skills. The giving and this receiving feedback component was, I would say, critical. Looking at that not as a negative thing, but kind of how you can give feedback to someone and have it turn into a positive experience. Additionally, even something as simple as how you structure your meetings and how you organize your time together. You have to kind of learn how to be very efficient with multiple student schedules. Everyone kind of has limited availability. So knowing how to start a meeting and figure out what success looks like for that specific meeting was something that we all took away from it. There's also a skills development workshop series that goes along. So you learn different tools and frameworks, and there's insights from all of the mentors and other experts in fields. And additionally, there's the opportunity to speak with past alumni at certain workshops as well. And it's really unique because these are people that you might not have the opportunity to get insights from in your normal student experience, but kind of the tools that you learn might be applicable to kind of whatever programs or projects you have, even in your academic career as well. There's also the optional career offboarding series. So this was led kind of during my time by Gloria Eid. And this was something that I found really helpful because it kind of took the narrative of, this is what you're doing now. These are the tools and the skills that you're learning. And how can you translate that into your future career? You know, what do you want your future career to look like? And she did a lot of values work with figuring out how you can design a career path that is in line with what you find important and what kind of you hope to accomplish in your life and in the future. The other thing that obviously is an ongoing thing, even as an alumni now, is the networking. So during my Reach experience, I had an alumni mentor, and she was very open to asking questions. So anytime there was something that I didn't understand about the process or even kind of the research experience as a whole, she was very receptive to questions and acted almost like a guide through that process. There's also socials, and you can message people for coffee chats. Joe always likes to say that there's Reach researchers across the world, and if you're in a city and there's a Reach person there, you can message them and they'll meet you for coffee. And even as an alumni now, you kind of have this network of researchers and alumni and professionals who are part of this Reach process, and you can access their knowledge and expertise, which is very nice. Moving along. So specifically looking at the MPH students, kind of how this can benefit you. The qualitative research experience is a key highlight. So looking at how you fill out an REB application, those interview skills, those thematic analyses, and knowledge translation. These were all things that I was learning in my program at the time that I was actually applying them to the Reach process as well. So it was extremely valuable for me to have theoretically learned something in like a classroom setting, and then being able to turn around and apply that in a real world interview and then in a real world analysis as well. It really solidified that learning for me. The multidisciplinary approach is also something that I found very helpful. So I know in the MPH and the Dalalana programs, there's a lot of combination with other people in Dalalana, but looking at kind of the broader basis of U of T, having the opportunity to collaborate with engineering students or potentially people who are in the Faculty of Medicine or law or any different discipline, and being able to collaboratively come up with those problem solving skills was something that I found very, very beneficial. Learning to kind of see things from different lenses. Again, kind of those insights from people with years of experience is absolutely invaluable, because kind of most of us are at the start of our career and kind of just figuring out how we problem solve and how we approach problems. And having people who have gone through this process, kind of started out a career and learned how to navigate those things that come up is a great opportunity to have. You also kind of have the opportunity to contribute to work in areas that you might not previously. So agriculture was not something that I was familiar with prior to my reach experience. But having gone through this, it is now something that kind of is on my radar and I have more information about, and I'm more familiar with, and I had the opportunity to kind of learn more about it and potentially kind of have an impact on that moving forward. And again, obviously the connections, that's something that is wonderful. So at the Reach conference this year, we got to meet people from the Mexico and the UCL schools, and having the ability to connect with them and see kind of how they approach problems and kind of what their Reach experience was like, and having those relationships with people in different parts of the world is definitely an ongoing benefit of the Reach Alliance. So any questions you have, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I always tell people that I love talking about Reach. So send me a message if there's anything that I can kind of answer for you, or anything about the presentation that is unclear you have questions about moving forward.
Thank you, Olivia. Yes, I feel like many researchers pay it forward because they received support from previous, researchers with their application and questions and things like that. So I know Olivia is offering the same kind of support to anybody here that's interested. So we're going to move on to the application process. The first thing that you just need to know to be eligible is that we're just looking for students across U of T at all different education levels and campuses that are registered U of T students for the next upcoming fall and winter term. So we always welcome people with public health degrees because it's such a relevant topic and perspective to bring to, reaching the hardest to reach is very much in line with public health. But obviously, that we're interdisciplinary, so we welcome applications from students with poli-sci to humanities, to engineering and sciences and law and medicine and health studies. So all of it is welcome because all of those different perspectives add value to one, seeing the problem, and two, the connections that are made within the cohort. The traits that we look for are based on the traits that we've observed over the years that really are key to helping our researchers succeed. And the second source of these traits is actually the traits in which employers have looked and identified as being key in the workplace in order for to really build what is called the 21st century skill set. So it's not just content knowledge that employers are looking for now. Things are changing so fast in terms of the information age, but they're really looking for skill sets in which people are able to collaborate in team settings, be effective communicators, strategic thinkers, and also just have that drive to learn constantly. And the reason why we say that is, as you know, it is interdisciplinary. So there will be students that you come in and you will not know necessarily a research methodology or a content area, but there needs to be a curiosity to learn in order for you to really thrive in this setting in which there will be information gaps. But we're looking for people that are action oriented enough to be driven by the questions and be driven to learn on their own, because the student leadership initiative, we're looking for people that can take action and take responsibility into their own hands and not wait for somebody to tell them what to do, because this is all about developing leadership skills. Okay, so please look in detail on our website. There is one of our interview questions or application questions related to that. So the application question or the process is online. It's an online form. We have 6 short answer questions here, 250 words each. They're not long. It's just really to look at your past experiences with working in teams, working in kind of roles and expectations you've had. And then we're also looking to see where do you want to go into the future and how does the SDGs play a part in it? And to learn more about you. So these are questions to kind of dig deeper into who you are, what your motivations are, and what drives you. And the required documentation that needs to be submitted is 1, a resume, just 2 pages, and 2, your unofficial transcript with your U of T grades. If you're a first-year student, please feel free to submit your grades from the previous year or your previous academic history. we're open to receiving that as well. We're not looking at GPA cutoff or anything like that. We're just looking at what are the topics and courses you've taken. And then because you'll need it for the annotated transcript, which is a special document that we are asking you to tell us a story by selecting 5 courses on your transcript that tell us who you are and explain why those courses or what you learn from them and how they reflect who you are. And this is one to provide you an opportunity to tell us your interest through your courses. We know that grades are not everything. We know that things, we know that just looking at a grade and a topic doesn't mean that you do well in one area or you're really passionate about another. So there's a lot of learning that happens. There's a lot of also life circumstances that happen. Sometimes people use that opportunity if they had a bad grade or a year where they're really struggling with something, and to provide an explanation of how they overcame or provide a contextual understanding of that course or that grade. But really, it's meant to be able to share with us an opportunity of who you are and also what you're motivated by through your courses that you take. And then the last piece is a co-curricular activity. So this is a list of courses that, or clubs or sports or different research assistantships that you are already either committed to or looking to commit. And we're just wanting to see what's already on your plate to be able to assess, how does REACH fit in, and looking at your bandwidth for that. The deadline is February 12th at midnight. So it's a Sunday. So please make sure you submit before midnight, and that you have to do it all in one setting. So you can kind of do all your questions in a Word document and copy and paste it in and have your PDF in a single document ready to upload. What happens after is that everyone will get a response by the end of February. So those that are moving on to the next phase of the application process will be invited to do an interview, and those interviews will take place in March. And there will be a panel interview there where there'll be alumni, faculty mentors, or staff. So please be on the lookout for that email. And then we ask that people take the time to fill out an optional student equity survey. This mimics the U of T student equity survey. And it's to help us understand who's applying and being able to really know kind of the effectiveness of our various initiatives. So please do take the opportunity to do that. It's an important survey for us in terms of assessing our own efforts. The critical pathway of what happens next is on our website. So after the final selection of researchers is done by the end of March, we hope to select 20 to 30 researchers, and there will be an onboarding session in April. And then over the summer, researchers will work together during the summer months virtually on their research topic. And if people are engaged in work or placements during the 9 to 5 kind of typical business hours, any meetings that we host will be in the evening for flex hours. But once the teams are kind of in person back when school starts will be when kind of in-person events will take place. But we understand that over the summer, people go back home or people have other obligations. So we're trying to do all the selection by the end of the winter exam period, and then be able to connect virtually over the summer. And that's when the 12 to 14 months process will begin. So we're going to open up the floor for Q&A. I didn't see anything come up in the questions. So I will ask people to submit their questions right now in the Q&A, but we do have some frequently asked questions that we can start with. So one of the questions that often is asked, Olivia, is, and I'll throw this to you, is what is the time commitment? I know you kind of mentioned that Zainab did a work placement while doing it. It seems reasonable, but it is pretty time intensive. I know you are at every workshop and you're at every event, and you really took part in the fullness of all the offerings at REACH. But I'm sure that there was pre-planning to make sure that there was room for all of those activities. So can you share with our students here, what does it look like in terms of time?
Yeah, I think it definitely kind of flows depending on kind of the point of the process you're at.
Mhm.
I think the estimate they say is like 5 to 10 hours a week. And some weeks it's more than the 10, and some weeks it's, 1 or 2, kind of depending what you have going on at that period. It definitely is manageable, and kind of time management is a huge skill to have kind of going into this. So if you're not really a planner, if you're not really someone who likes to organize things, that might be something that you want to potentially figure out how to work on kind of going into this process. But I was doing the master's program. I was working a part-time job, and I still found time to kind of do this, and it didn't seem overwhelming. It does require a little bit of kind of organization at the forefront. But again, it's one of those things where you get out of it what you put in. So if you're going to the workshops, if you're going to the networking events, if you're kind of putting in a lot of effort at the forefront and at the get-go, it just kind of makes the process easier going forward. And additionally, kind of the skills that you're going to learn through the workshop series, they can be applicable to things that you're doing through your school.
Mhm.
And kind of going back to that performance coaching piece, that was something that our coach really worked with us on, is kind of how do you effectively manage your time in a meeting where you can get everything that you need to get done for the week organized and figured out in maybe a 45-minute or an hour-long window. So kind of the effective use of time is something that is kind of fostered throughout the process as well. So something you definitely kind of work on as a skill, and that can be translated into your career going forward as well.
Yeah, we would say it's typically about 5 to 10 hours on average a
Yeah.
week, and which is equivalent to a course, because there is work that individuals have to do on their own in order to make that 1 hour meeting, reasonable. So there's individual readings, individual work, and then there's a series of kind of meetings with your team members, meetings with the faculty mentor, meetings with the coach. We've got skills development workshop series, we've got events. So there is time commitment. It's not all in one chunk necessarily, but it is blocks of time. And so that's why we really want to be able to see how that there is students that are agreeing to do REACH have enough kind of space in their schedule to be able to meet. Because if your schedule is so full and there's no kind of empty spaces in which you can make time to be able to make some of these meetings with other busy people possible, it really becomes a really difficult pain point. So that's where we really say prioritization is key, because this is co-curricular, so your academics should not suffer by taking on this work. But it also means that a lot of our students that come in are doing lots of different things. They're already doing leadership development, so they've got lots of different time management skills at play, but we definitely will provide different tools to make sure that that is a key thing. So we have a question here about how students are assigned to different projects, and if will they be assigned to ongoing projects or upcoming projects? Okay, so I can kind of speak to this piece. Is up to this year's cohort, U of T students took the time to once they were selected to work in pairs, and then they looked to identify projects that were reaching the hardest to reach, and then there was a whole pitching process. So students pitched the process to the group, and then through a series of sessions were able to vote, and then the final selection happened by vote. And then in terms of how people got individually placed within those teams, was that they put in their ranked preference for which case studies was most interesting to them. But then the other part was that us on the leadership team at REACH will look at ranked preference, but also look at kind of what is the different expertise that is needed, the diversity of skill sets and experiences to support that case study team. So it's a mix of art and science, in which students will always be provided with a preference of a case study to work on, but ultimately we are looking at the bigger picture. And really, a lot of the students that come in, they're not kind of tied to a topic. They know that all the case studies will be of relevance and of importance. But so I think being more loosely connected to the case study is ideal, because the key success of your experience at REACH will be, is your team able to meet? Is your team able to be on the same page about the deliverables and what you want to get out of the process? And so a lot of the experiences of the success factors are not kind of related to a case study topic. It's actually related to your team and how those teams are formed. But I will say this is that in the upcoming year, we are changing the process for case study selection, meaning that we've been learning from how the work has been done and the feedback from our partners and the feedback from our researchers, and that we're going to take more of a community collaborative approach because of the very condensed process in which we only have 1 year for our students to design a research study from start to end. It's a very ambitious to do. But it also means that there needs to be buy-in and support from collaborative partners that in which the case study is based on. So we're looking to, in our alliance of various stakeholders of nonprofits, public and private sector, is identify some collaborating organizations that will work with the teams to provide a problem space. So Action Against Hunger is one organization that is interested in working with us. So we're looking at, what are the problem sets that they have and how would that look like? And so our teams would then have an organization that already has agreed to work with our students, but then the process of determining the research question and driving the deliverables and the deadlines and the process of it getting to fruition is still led by our students. So it is much more evolving. We're also evolving and iterating. That's part of also our commitment to the Equity and Diversity and Inclusion Charter, which is that we want the impact of the research to be maximized. And that maximization comes from collaborating partners on the ground from whom the research is about to also have a say in what those questions are that are investigated and how they do it. Does that answer the question? I hope that does. If you have other questions about that, let us know. We're looking at a variety of case studies and topics and organizations. We have a global alliance, so we really want a wide reach. But we also know that here in Canada, we have our own gaps to fill in terms of SDGs and poverty issues, income inequality, gender inequality. So I think there are a variety of ways that we're trying to address that. Those gaps through the case studies as well. And, in all of our collaborative partner sites, in the UK, the students in UK are examining UK issues. Students in Ghana are examining, issues in their own communities in Ghana. So I think with our U of T groups, we are trying to see, is there case studies here in Canada that we're best positioned to be researchers for as well, in addition to kind of looking at global scope issues. So I don't see questions here, but I'll just ask one more of Olivia is, how did you manage kind of like working in that dynamic with different disciplines, but also different education levels? I know you mentioned that there was a fourth researcher that was originally there. So just in terms of giving a sense of how students understand the team dynamics and the team formation process.
Yeah, so I would say the performance coaching definitely kind of was something that set us up for success in terms of that team bonding process and figuring out our dynamic. As Moni mentioned, kind of we did initially have a fourth member, and kind of in terms of the time commitment, it just ended up being too much for that person, which definitely seems to be is something that happens. So kind of as a team of 3, we had the option kind of going forward, whether or not we wanted to add a fourth person into that mix, or kind of whether we thought the time commitment was available to kind of take on the workload as a group of 3. But I would say kind of because we had that coaching and we really invested the time in the beginning to think about how our team was going to kind of tackle the workload and who was going to take on a larger part of responsibility for different sections of the case study process, we really kind of ironed that out in our team charter in the first kind of couple months of working together. So that really set us up for success moving forward, because we had a clear expectation and kind of vision of what this whole process was going to look like over those 12 and 14 months. And kind of we had an overview of when this was going to be kind of a bigger workload or commitment, and who was going to be kind of spearheading each of those different pieces. And kind of naturally based on kind of, again, Moni said different backgrounds and education levels, there was different parts that fit better for different people's experiences. But kind of putting that work in the beginning and kind of outlining clearly the expectations of each team member, the time commitment kind of for the full process, that really set us up kind of in terms of managing that going forward and having that working dynamic where we could kind of fit that into our academic and kind of external curriculars as well. There was something else I wanted to say and I just forgot it.
That's okay. I think we'll conclude with, so now that you've done your case study, can you just share with the group how you're still engaged with REACH and the knowledge translation part? Because I think that is something that wasn't covered in your presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. So in November, I actually had the opportunity to kind of do a presentation for Global Affairs Canada on gender equity and kind of what that can look like in community-based programming. And kind of when we did that project, so I was collaborating with someone who was in the same cohort as me, so the 2021-2022 REACH cohort, and then someone who was from years previous, I think like the second REACH cohort, so a few years alum prior. And we kind of looked at cross-cutting insights. So we took kind of general themes from our case studies that were relevant to gender in the community-based programming and how that can be scaled and implemented in different sectors and areas. And we kind of put together 3 main insights that could be shared with these policymakers that would be relevant across sectors. So that presentation was something that was really interesting to work on because it was nice to see that the work we were doing had applications kind of going forward. And then coming out of that project or that presentation, we have kind of opted to write a policy paper for this. So we're looking at having it published sometime around International Women's Day. So hopefully kind of we'll have that available to share with everyone around then. But I know another member of my team is working on a very similar kind of cross-cutting insight paper with people from, I think a couple people from the Mexico schools and someone from U of T as well. So kind of once you have this information, there's definitely different avenues depending on kind of what your messaging is and who you're trying to get the information to on how you can continually keep sharing that and applying it to different sectors and different kind of projects that are ongoing as well.
So thanks so much, Olivia. I know, and that's like, it takes ongoing volunteer time, right? And part of that is because you see, we want to engage the research on an ongoing basis in that there are people, it stays relevant. We still have case studies from 5 years ago in which consultants are finding on our website and wanting to incorporate in their research. So I think the insights and how, and that, I think that's the key thing about REACH research is that it's not time sensitive. Yes, it's contextual to understanding how something was delivered within a specific country and community and group, but actually the insights that are generated are applicable to the process and the mechanisms of supporting and scaling up initiatives, which has, ongoing impact and relevance in any case. So and I will conclude by saying once you're in REACH, you're part of this community for life. And so we engage you with opportunities to continue to disseminate your research findings, continue to give back and take leadership within our community in terms of mentorship with new researchers, but also across the board now as we're growing our global alliance. We've got alumni now from all sorts of the world that we're kind of growing and developing and supporting to be in accelerated leadership positions. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Olivia, for your time and insights. We really look forward to your applications. If you have further questions, please reach out to our email, or Olivia will share, has shared her email and her LinkedIn. Feel free to be on our website and also look at the ways in which our researchers are part of, and they all have their LinkedIn profile, so you can see kind of where they end up going and how they have user research in terms of leveraging their own careers and personal development.